The life and legacy of civil rights icon Medgar Evers lives on right here in New York City, which is home to Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn. And what comes to mind when we celebrate Black history is often the men of the movement: Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Medgar Evers.
That's right. So what we also know is that behind each of those men was a powerful woman. And in the new book, Medgar and Myrlie, Medgar Evers and the love story that awakened America, our next guest gives us an intimate look at the civil rights movement through the eyes of his widow, Myrlie Evers. So please welcome to the Big 7 Morning News, MSNBC host and author Joy-Ann Reid. Good to see you. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Big fan of yours. Watch you every night. Let's talk about this new book, though, okay? Myrlie Evers, thrust into the spotlight as the first widow of a civil rights activist. So many people know the story of Medgar Evers, right? When he was killed in 1963, Joy. And she's been fighting for racial justice ever since. You dive into this in the new book and explain how she never really wanted to be an activist, which I thought was so interesting. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, and thank you for having me on. You know, one of the stories that we really don't tell about these civil rights leaders is the story of their whole lives. You know, they fell in love, they had children, they had kids that had to get off to school and have their school lunches packed, and they, you know, were basically taken care of by 1950s housewives, and that was who Myrlie Evers was. She intended to really literally be the wife of an insurance salesman, and what she wound up as is the wife of a civil rights leader, and she was very reluctant. She was very open about it. She was afraid for his life. They were getting death threats daily. Every time she picked up the phone, she didn't know whether it was a distressed Black person or a Klansman threatening to blow up their home. So she was terrified for herself, for her family, and for him. And she knew that this kind of work could and likely would get him killed.
Yeah, I mean, rewinding a little bit, when they met back in college, she was warned to stay away from his type. What was that all about?
Right. So Myrlie was raised in rural Vicksburg, Mississippi, by her grandmother, who she called Mama, and her aunt, who's also named Myrlie, Aunt Myrlie. And they told her, little girl, when you're going off to Alcorn State, which it was at the time, you need to stay away from upperclassmen, football players, and military veterans, and Medgar Evers was all three.
Oh, wow. So naturally she was drawn right to him. Right to protest of your parents.
Yeah, what gave her the idea, though, to give him a chance?
Well, you know, it's interesting. So he used this line on her. She's, you know, the first day of class, all of the football players are practicing and all the young ladies are all sort of there and assembling and they're sort of checking each other out. And he comes up to her as she's leaning on a pole and he says, you know, you shouldn't lean on that pole. You're going to get shocked. And she sort of, you know, blows him off and is like, I will be fine. But she's thinking, wow, he's kind of handsome. And they end up having this interesting sort of intellectual romance where he's obsessed with the movements in Africa as these countries are getting liberated, and particularly Kenya. And so he's talking to her about world affairs. And for her, that's something she wasn't used to. You know, this was usually, you know, boys who were just talking about goofy stuff. And this guy's talking about like worldly stuff. And so they have this intellectual romance. And that's what really draws her to him, is his knowledge of the world.
You know, Joy, I love when you peel back the onions of some of these stories and you get to actually talk to the folks who are still alive, right? And you got to do so. Myrlie's in her 90s now. You got a chance to talk to her, have this very candid conversation about everything that she endured following her husband's death, 30 years to bring those killers to justice. So what kept her motivated as the years went on?
You know what? What kept her motivated is the thing that women are not supposed to have, which is anger. She was enraged by the murder of her husband. She was a 30-year-old widow with 3 young children, 9 years old and under, 9 to 3. And she was angry. And she knew that she couldn't access that anger publicly because she didn't want to be perceived as this angry Black woman, this mad woman. But internally, inside, she never let go of that anger. And that's what drove her for 30 years to say her husband deserved justice. And to be honest with you, Black Mississippi deserved justice. America deserved justice. And she wanted to see this man put in prison. And it took her 30 years, but she got him.
Yeah, and what made you decide to write the book now?
You know, what's interesting, I met Myrlie Evers Williams in 2018 when I was doing my former weekend show. So we were out in California, we just happened to be there, and my wonderful booking team booked her and Maxine Waters. And the 3 of us are all sitting on set as just girls, right? And after over, we all just had this incredible conversation. And she went to this conversation about Medgar Evers, and she spoke about him with this current and very present adoration and love. And you could see she's still in love with this man. Aww. And she said to me, Medgar Evers was the love of my life. And she married again and said her second husband knew Medgar was the love of her life. And it stayed with me for years. And when it came time to decide what my next book was going to be, I'm sitting around with my agent and my